Welcome, it's time for another community level showcase, where I'll show off levels that are fun to play and also not spaghetti in their code. Let's go! First up, we have this little memory card game, which has cute little designs with GBG related cards. It's pretty straightforward, you match the cards, you get a point, until eventually you match everything on the board. The most impressive part of this card game is the shuffling mechanic, where it completely randomizes the course layout, so every card exists exactly twice. Here's what it looks like on the inside. You see, overall everything is pretty neatly organized. And I'd like to focus on this general area, which is for the actual shuffling mechanic. This card shuffling has three main steps. The part where we get the random numbers, the part where we check that it's a unique permutation so we don't have duplicates, and lastly, the part where you send the cards to the target destinations. Here, 64th is basically getting an RNG value unchecked for each individual card. Then, here we have a checking mechanism. The way this number check works is that this is a bunch of 2D marker nodons for each individual card. Here it's hard to see because they're overlaid on each other. But the idea is that a 2D marker nodon will output a signal over here whenever it's overlaying another marker nodon. Whenever an invalid card combination has been found, where let's say two cards are trying to be sent to the same spot, then what we're going to do is try the RNG again and just give it a whirl until eventually we find a combination of cards that's valid. The last part is when you found a valid combination of card positions, then send the RNGs into these little blocks of code that are going to send the cards to a specific coordinate. So each of these cards basically has a label of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. And you just decode that into a specific coordinate. But overall, the game is really cool and I do recommend it. Our second level for today comes from Tan. In this game, you don't just dodge projectiles. In order to score, you need to have projectiles within your little radius of your character over there. And so this puts a pretty clear risk-reward relationship, where in order to score, you gotta get close to projectiles, but getting close to projectiles is bad for your health. Second, Tan is making the projectiles come out from that rubber ducky by using a rotating object that rotates so fast that it's like the projectiles come out with kind of a pattern, but then they move around a little bit erratically. And part of that erratic motion comes from attract nodons that are on the player character. And so that brings the projectiles from coming at a kind of random position and a random angle to come in at the player. Overall, the code is laid out with these comments so you understand what each individual block does. And there is a key here for decoding what the different wormhole IDs mean. In terms of spaghetti, and there was like two main reasons why I was like on the fence about showing this level. One is very heavy use of wormholes, even with the key, makes it hard to understand what's going on in the code. And second is a lot of very irregularly sized nodons over here. So sometimes it just makes it tough to read. So here I'll give him points for effort, but not really for succeeding. The next level comes from Fancy Games, who made another level in the editor view, where here you see that we can control this little player character and move him around, and this allows us to basically do some platforming with the marker nodon. And this is actually a pretty interesting little custom character, where you can jump around, you can dodge the big red mounds, and overall he's using a couple of the different nodons as kind of like art assets for the actual program itself. So here you see if I touch the red little mound, then we get sent back to the start. He also has a little checkpoint over here, and moving obstacles using the extend nodon and the opacity mode for the different 1D marker nodons. Here, a little moving projectile with a 2D marker. That's pretty much it. I want to focus on the design of this custom character, which, as you can see, is made with several 2D marker nodons, here for each little dot, and each little dot is being moved around with this little physics engine over here. And the way that it works is that you can test collision here using the 2D marker, where the output tells you, has a certain one of the balls touched a marker. So here, this is how this continuous marker is able to define a ground for the custom character. Separately from that, he can use little bullseyes as the equivalent of a touch sensor for the 2D marker character, because when the 2D marker comes near this bullseye, then it'll activate it and go through the wormhole to do whatever other piece of logic. This is how he's controlling the stage hazards, the checkpoint, and the final goal. The code is very cleanly laid out. The only weakness with this level is if you want to play in docked mode, I needed to change the control scheme, here adding some left and right bumper controls for the custom character. so that I can move around without, moving around the whole screen. But still, it was pretty easy for me to do this because the code is so cleanly laid out. It's very clean and well executed, and overall good job. Today's next level is The Sky is Falling, EX, by just some guy. And the way this works is that here I can control each individual turret with left stick or right stick, and use that to aim at these little blocks that come down at the city. What sets this shooter apart from others is that the difficulty increases with your score. So here you can see what's going on at a score of 30. And as our score becomes even higher, we start to see small squares as little obstacles, as well as these large black squares that require multiple shots to repel. It's a fun little level, so let's take a look at the guts. It's very well organized, and you see clear little separations with comments so you can understand what to do. So if I wanted to change the left cannon's control scheme, for example, you know just to come over here and make the edits. In this level, the most impressive thing is the generation of all these randomly generated meteors to keep things fresh. The two main factors that influence the meteor launcher are the score, which is how many meteors you've killed, which also shows how deep you are in the level, and this basically controls the difficulty curve of the level. Second, there's a bunch of RNG being used to control the different angles for the meteors themselves. My main complaint about the code is that this part is obviously very, very messy with respect to exactly how everything is connected here. So the main solution for this would have been to use a 2D marker node to kind of keep some of this logic a little bit better. But when you consider everything that he did as a whole, in terms of organizing the code and making it legible, I think overall he did a pretty good job. Our last level for today, or rather series of levels, are the Rat Race series, which are all made by the same person. Here you can see this very visually impressive and clean set of levels where you control this little rat ball thing with a control stick, and you just try to race through as fast as possible, and when you get to the finish line, you get a rating based on how well you did. This ranking system greatly increases the replayability of this level as you try to make your way through this little obstacle course faster and faster. There are a few things I want to focus on here. First, I want to talk about the visual presentation and the curves. So I know this series is not really about visual appeal, but rather more about the techniques and the gameplay to make things fun. But overall, here I want to talk about how we're getting these curves, because these curves affect the gameplay. GBG does not have the best tools to make smooth curves like this. Here, if you see more closely, this curve is literally a bunch of boxes. In general, he's using a wide variety of boxes in order to define a smooth contour. This can be a smooth contour along the XZ plane, as well as these little ramps in the XY plane, where here you can see a very smooth progression. Now overall, not having any little bumps, etc. is very important for gameplay because otherwise this little ball will snag on them like crazy. So in general, attention to this visual detail does dramatically help the gameplay. Second, I want to focus on this code being absolutely immaculate. Like when you look at the layout of this level, it looks beautiful. You can see exactly everything that's going on. And here with these little commented blocks of code, very simple comments, just showing how the different parts of the level work out. The whole series of levels have very, very clean design and are a good role model for what you should do to make your levels clean. The only thing I'll really criticize here is the overuse of unique wormhole IDs, but overall I'd say it's pretty solid. That's all I have for you today. Remember that if you want your level to be showcased, besides sending it to me, there's two main criteria that I use to pick levels. One is that the code is clean enough to understand what has to happen. Overall, it just has to be not spaghetti. And second, there has to be a very clear and strong focus on the gameplay. I don't care how visually impressive it is if it's a walking simulator. I'm looking for levels that are fun to play. I'm also more likely to pick a level if it has something that's technically interesting to me. I hope you enjoyed this showcase. If you like content like this, or other GBG tutorials and content, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you around later. Bye!